As you can see, we're going to talk about simple casting, and yes, that's me, Lester Brewer. And you can see that this presentation was put together basically back in 220, and that's the modelers retreat here is the local RPM, and it was also given on a group that was during the COVID period, hindsight 2020, where they would people get together from all over the country, and there'd usually be about a half of 6 hours of presentations. So now we'll get to it here. So simple casting. What got me started in simple casting? If you see this, this is a thermal gas, which the structure and the tanks are a copy, as well as the loading stand, which is still standing in a very rusted condition today. But this was an exact copy of the prototype. And you notice all the tanks. And I bought a few tanks, and I said, my goodness, this is going to cost me a fortune to put all the tanks in here. So I thought, well, I'd read about maybe doing some casting and thought about it. So this was time. So I went out and bought an aluminite, I'm sorry, kit, and started there, but eventually changed over to other products, which we'll look at here. So obviously, if you're going to do some casting, you're going to need a work area. And you see mine is just a simple wood table. And I was a woodworker. So this is a table I built that sits over my table saw for what it's worth. You're going to, and also be aware there is going to be animation in here. I hope it's not a problem. I did not take it out, but you're going to need mold rubber, obviously, to make the mold, which you see sitting there, the blue square at the bottom of the screen. You're going to need then that's the mold. The mold rubber, I'm sorry, it's in the back there. The two bottles, the blue and the white, kind of away from the paper towel. You have the resin, which is the yellow labeled material right next to the paper towels. You also notice there's an asterisk on the resin, and I put them in there for this presentation and others that if you're really interested in starting, usually the kit is the easiest, and Micromart has this kit. Obviously, you could go with others that are out there. You're also going to need a few tools for measuring, such as spoons. You see there. You're going to need mixing sticks. I really like the ones that come with the ice cream containers, the little wood spoons. They work very well. You're going to need some plastic or paper cups or other for mixing the rubber and the resin. You're going to also need gloves. You don't want that resin on your hands. I can tell you that. And it is not pleasant if you get it on there. Also, I use paper towel for cleanup. I think a lot of us do. And the work surface. Obviously, the work area and the work surface is that wood table, but resins will stick to everything and anything. And I recommend you put a piece of cardboard underneath where you're actually working and doing the molds. Also, you're going to need, again, here I mentioned the paper cups. You see them up there on the right side of the screen. You also have mold release. Mold release, usually you only need if you're going to use a vacuum chamber. We'll get a little into that. And modeling clay. And that seems kind of strange, but it does have a good use in the casting world. Also, couple things seem strange, but you'll want to run down to the local grocery, pick up parchment paper and glass covers. You could buy the glass yourself, have it cut it, or I had mine done over at the home improvement store, and the gentleman said, "Oh, I'll cut it all up for you with no charge." So it worked out real well. I used the glass covers you see there and the parchment paper. I also use a vacuum chamber, and you see the pump there. If you choose to get into the casting, buy one definitely with a see-through lid, and you'll see why in a bit, but you definitely want one with a see-through lid. Now we get into the molds, and there are different mold materials, and you have the silicone mold putty, which is a 2 or 3 minute working time. and 10 to 20-minute cure time. Now, those are the little purple molds. You can, again, it's available through Micromart. You work it with your hands like any clay, any putty, and you can then flatten it out and press your master into it, and it makes a quick mold. Does not make always a very crisp, sharp item. So it's just something maybe quick and dirty, but not the best method. The molds in this presentation, I went to a 1-to-1 mix ratio, and those are the blue molds you see in that box there. And that has a 30-minute pot life, a 4-hour cure time. That's the blue one. That's a 1-to-1. And and then you have the upper white one, which is what you find in the aluminite kits. That's that 10-to-1 ratio. And so that one takes a little more putzing with. However, it gives you a stronger mold than the 1-to-1, in that it's just stronger material. And that has a 5-minute pot life, as you can see, 24-hour cure time. So it depends on what you want to do. For me, the 1-to-1 works very well, and I use that all the time. Obviously, once you got some molds made, to make the mold, you need a mold form, and you can make them out of styrene, which you see I've done on the right. You could make them out of wood. Some of the casting people I've talked to that do kits commercially, they actually use wood. Then there's the clay, which I mentioned. And now my styrene boxes over on the right, you notice they have a drop front, and they have hinges made out of that famous duct tape. The reason being is the resin, after a while, it lets go, and this way I can quickly make a couple new hinges, and the box is still good. Then you need a master, obviously, for the mold that you're going to do, or the part you're going to make. So you need an item, obviously, to mold. You are going to need, and it's the item you choose, obviously, for simple casting. A flat back is the easiest to work with. Okay. Also, in my case, which is there's no copyright. The copyright law says it's perfectly fine to make parts from any kit you purchase or manufacture, as long as you don't start selling it. If you sell it, you're breaking a copyright law. Then you also obviously could scratch build, and we will look at some of these a little bit later. The other thing, when I started casting or doing it, I used rubber cement to attach the parts into the mold box. And that is fine, except that on a small part, a lot of times, the rubber cement would let go and float up into the mold. Not good. And when I was talking to one of the gentlemen that does this for some of that was manufacturing a resin, he said use double-sided tape. That's what we do. And so simply went down to the local drugstore, and it works super. I've been using the double-sided Scotch tape ever since to attach the master into the mold. Now, again, if you're using with a vacuum chamber, you want mold release to be able to spray the mold. It helps. So, and the clay, one use of the clay, which is that if you have a part, let's say you want to copy one of the inner mountain ends for a car or a freight car, that has the pins on the back, and you don't want to cut those off. So here's a case where you could put the clay into the mold box, and then now press your parts into the clay, and therefore you can still make the flat mold and without cutting off those parts on the backside. Here's the 1-to-1 that I order from Micromart. I said you could use the 10-to-1. I just like something simple, easy, and it works great. So like I say, switched over years ago to the 1-to-1. And you notice that one part is white, one part is blue, which is nice. when you mix it, because obviously I mix in paper cups and use the wood spoon, and you mix the part A and part B, which is one is white, one blue, and you mix it and until you get a nice blue color, and you know you've got the rubber mixed properly, and it is then ready to obviously pour into the mold, which you see there. And after your cure time, which is usually 4 hours, is what they suggest. I have actually had some molds that do not set up in the 4 hour time frame, whether it be humidity or whatever. It may not be. There is whatever the reason is. I can't tell you, but I normally now let my molds set up overnight, and that way they are always a set. When I was saying sometimes if you opened them up after 4 hours, you might have a couple spots that weren't really set up well. Now, once the mold is set, I use a razor blade and I go around the edges, all the edges of the mold box except the front, because there you open up. Now, here's where that drop front comes in very nice and handy. Those you open up the duct tape hinges, drop the front, and obviously I use an X-Acto. That's a number 5 handle. You probably all know with an number 18 blade, and I remove the mold from the box, and here it is taken out. Now sometimes the master will stay within the mold, and if it does, like in this case, then now is the time to clean up that edge. You see, if you're on the right, when you look at the master inside the mold, there's a couple spots where the rubber has leaked underneath the master. So this would be a time, take a single edge razor blade. It's usually the easiest, and to clean that up. Then many times, obviously, if you use the mold release, it'll come out clean as can be, as you see right here. So now we've got the mold we need. We're ready to go, and we have a mold that we can now pour resin into. And obviously, if you start to do a lot of the casting, you will maybe want to put names or identify the mold to what it's for. It's the rubber. It does not like to take ink on it, but I use marker, and there is a new marker out that I just found at for what it was Home Depot that says it can write on anything. It does a good job, but to write, if you're just going to use the markers, you got to sand the back, and so sand the back of the rubber, and that will allow you to give a rough surface on that back of the mold to be able to write what you need on it. We get into the resin, and again, there's various pot life and cure times. There's a 1 minute pot life, 15-minute cure time, 7-minute, 30, 20-minute pot, 16-hour cure. I happen to like, and I can buy it locally. This one I don't order. I pick up my resin here locally, and it's IASCO. Obviously, that's their acronym is for the industrial supply. They provide the resin and projects for many of the local high schools, et cetera, in the Twin City area here. That's the shop classes, so to speak. But you can get resin from Micromart, and that happens to be, if you want the 7-minute pot life, which is what I like, 30-minute cure time, that's what I use all the time. That's my number one. Yet you want for Micromart, if you can't get resin locally, you would want the CR600 casting resin. Now you need a few items, obviously. Mix it. You got various spoon types, obviously, which are there. You got the mixing sticks themselves to mix the resin. You need, again, the plastic or paper cups, same as for the rubber. And whatever, if you got other containers you want to use, so be it. Also, you need, with the resin, what the new thing you need a clock. Yeah, you say, I need a clock. Yes. The reason you need a clock is after you mix, now this is no matter which resin you use, after part A and part B are mixed, okay, you must mix it for 30 seconds. That's the giving it the chemical process to, if, as you're aware or may not be aware, when resin cures, it heats up tremendously, puts out a lot of heat. And what you're doing in that 30 seconds of mixing time is starting that heat process. So now, whenever because I use the casting chamber, I usually spray the mold with mold release and then pour parts A and B of, into the mixing container. And here you see yours truly up in the upper right. We're mixing the 1-1. Then you see it, obviously, we're mixing it for 30 seconds. I'm staring at my wonderful clock that I showed you in the shop, therefore mixing for 30 seconds. Then here you have to pour the resin into the mold. Now you have to do it slowly. You can't just dump it into the center of the mold. Start at one corner of the mold. And as you notice upper right, we're starting in a corner, and if you follow the screens then left to right on the bottom, you're moving around that mold, pouring slowly, and you finish it best in the center of the mold. This allows that resin to flow into all of the areas of the mold. Especially if you don't have a casting chamber. Also, if you follow this process and do it slowly, you should not get a lot of air bubbles. And many times you will get no air bubbles if you take your time and do it slow. Then now to that resin to cover it, and I like a flat back on the castings, which is what you get commercially if you buy from some of the manufacturers or get them in resin kits. You want to add parchment paper. Here's where that comes in. Prior to learning about parchment paper, which Aaron Germunson, he did a lot of the casting. He actually put out his own resin kits for a period of time. He also has done, if you're a member of the MP Historical Society, their kits, Aaron has done a lot of their casting and produced their kits. He kind of was my mentor, and when I had questions and things, I would go to him for help, such as when I selected the chamber for the mold, putting them in. But anyway, the parchment paper, if you don't use it and you were to put the glass directly onto the resin, which I did for a period of time in my ignorance, now the resin sticks to the glass, and it takes a lot of time and careful cutting with a single edge razor blade to get that resin off the glass. So parchment paper solves all the problem. Then you have, say, over the parchment paper.
That's a belly girl. You good girl?
Okay, you place the glass over the parchment paper, which we're doing here. And here it goes into the mold chamber. And the vacuum chamber, here's the beauty of the see-through lid. You will notice, if you look carefully at it, on the right side of that resin casting, there's like a little air bubble that's being taken out in the process as the vacuum was created. But that's the beauty of the see-through lid. You can see what's happening. I use the vacuum chamber for making the molds as well as for the resin. Now, once you get the resin in there, you only have to leave it in there for maybe 5 to 10 minutes, and then you pull it out and let it cure for its 4-hour cure time. Or as I said, I leave them overnight for absolute. Then you got to, once it's set up, be it overnight. Here again, the resin comes out of the mold. It's a matter of cutting off. There's excess usually, and so you might end up. Sometimes you will end up with still air bubbles, even with a vacuum chamber. You end up once in a while with small air bubbles, and if that's the case, you can fix that by either resin can be poured on top of resin, and it takes well if you want to do that. If you know, in this mold, if you look, there's a couple small little circles which were air bubbles. I like the testers. That's the white putty. If you put that on, and once you put it in there into the resin and spread it, you cannot tell it. Once it cures, it looks like there was no air bubble or any spot at all in the mold. And normally, that air bubble does not go to the front of the castings as a norm. It will normally only be on the back side. So that's one nice thing if you get them. So now we got a part, obviously, that once we've taken it out, we've demolded, you got a part that's ready for use or storage. And then as you go along, you're going to end up, in my case, I've been doing this for a lot of years. You end up with various molds and you have various projects. And I'd like to just show you a few projects that we have done. You notice in the upper right-hand corner, and you see the different molds. I've done coal loads for hoppers, gons. You see reefer hatches there, right? Different. So there's roof vents. You see a small one in the back. We'll get into a little bit of that. But in this case, the first one, that Illinois Central car, here we have, there's the mold that were made on the right side. Uh, the masters were come out of that bag in the middle, which came out of the RPM, as you can see. And the castings done with the mold are, of course, there on the left. So this is a case of then where you need the parts that you can end up with if you bought a couple cars or use those in other places. Here the parts were installed, and of course you got the finished model eventually that you run on your railroad, right? Then you also, when you do a casting, you will find that mixing of the resin, unless you want to be really, really precise, normally you will have, and to whatever mold you have, you would have to know exactly how much to mix. Rather, I mix a little more, don't mind. And then you make molds of detail items. Uh, Here we have a mold that was done with crates. So rather than waste the resin, though, that's left over once you pour your main mold, you can make the small parts. Again, parchment paper, once the resin is poured in, the glass cover, and we wait for the resin to cure. We end up usually on this type, on a small item, it doesn't take hours. Usually in this case, as you see, 15 minutes, depending on the temperature, and you can start to remove the excess flash from a small project like this. You can obviously, you note, here's one where the mold even picked up, and this shows you how well it can pick up detail. You notice it could do the double-sided tape. You can see it there. So the resin does a wonderful job. If the mold is well done, the resin does a wonderful job of duplicating the part. Then here we demold, in this case, the crates. And if you've been doing it for a while, you'll see that those, in this case, the crates begin to multiply. And so you can be a good guy, pass out tons of them to your friends. And you'll find as you do it, you'll develop more and more little projects. As I've done tanks, sacks, fuel tank, transformers for telephone poles, vents, switch stands, and it goes on and on. It's only whatever your mind can do, whether you, especially if you're a scratch builder, to come up with items you can end up molding and using on the railroad. Of course, it's nice to have a use when you have more than one part. Now, sometimes you want to make a unique mold, and this project came about. Tony Thompson had written an article about the Athearn tank car, that the dome is too small, and so he was preaching or giving, when he in his presentations on it, he would say you should pick up two kits. You maybe pick up a second one at the flea market to do the cutting to get the proper dome height. And I thought about that, and I said, well, since you're doing casting, why not make a dome that works? So what you see here is a paper towel. You could use a toilet paper tube, and obviously there's that molding clay in use again. It's sealed up around the bottom. That's a Varney tank car you see there, held in place. The rubber was poured. Now there's the mold popped off, and there's that dome, the size you need. I needed for the Athearn tank car for the project. So, and you notice here that mold or the rubber does not harm that tank car in any shape or form. So that's another beauty of when you're making the part, the mold, the rubber, it doesn't hurt the master at all in any way. So here you see where that cast part, now it was a matter of taking the Athearn tank car, cutting off the other old dome, inserting the new one. And again, here, resin takes paint well, as on the freight car models that I do a lot of. And obvious, excuse me, if you're using water-based paint, obviously it's, I'm gonna paint the resin. It's nice to, I would recommend you wipe it down with 91% isopropyl alcohol. And I normally do that with cotton swabs, are the easiest method to do that with. Then here you see the finished product on the railroad. And I can say that Tony Thompson saw this and he said, "Oh my God, that's not it." He'd never seen anybody do it that way before. So I felt pretty good about that. Helps the one's ego once in a while.
Yeah.
Anyway, now that if you take this to the extreme, here you have where you can make the parts for an entire kit. And I saw this Sioux Line single sheet box car. You notice the upper part that's a train miniature How Truss side single sheet box car, and cut away the ends with the molded on parts, remake them, and eventually, you know, then once you make a mold, you get one with the door on, door off, obviously an under frame ends, and there you have the roof. So you can end up making the parts. Now that puts a unique car on my railroad that nobody else has. Okay, and that was the purpose of this, and it was something I wanted to try. I had never done an entire. I normally just do parts, not always an entire kit. And this one, I wanted the particular car, and that's one of the advantages, of course, of doing molding that you casting. You can do it make something. So here we are, and that's my friend Charlie Brown. And if you have any questions, I'm gonna, by the way, that's Railroad Charlie, Anyway, if you have any questions, I'll kill this, and if you have any, we will get to that. Okay. Let's see if we can get out of here. Bear with me. I think
Good.
I've stopped the share.
Yes, you have, Lester. Nice job. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a
Oh,
great
you're very
use for
welcome.
old slide boxes.
Pardon?
It's a great use for old slide boxes.
Oh, sure. Oh, you like that cabinet? I'm a woodworker. I've got probably 10,000 slides. When I used to be younger in my younger days and do a lot of rail fanning, I used to be out every Sunday, usually Saturday, hang around some of the car shops. My pet railroad used to be the M&S, and my wife used to pack a picnic lunch, and we pretty much around the Twin City area in our day over 2 years covered every railroad within 75 miles out of and back of the Twin Cities. Anyway, yeah, so I had a lot of slide boxes, and being a woodworker, I thought, I could put those to work. So if you notice, I made them into a parts cabinet. Anyway. Were there any questions? Anybody, anything, or?
Lester, do you tap the mold to get rid of air bubbles?
Okay, because I'm using the vacuum chamber, I do not. But if you do not own a vacuum chamber and you're doing it, you can tap the mold or drop it. If maybe you lift an inch or two and drop it, and that will help. And the other thing, there are out there what they call a shaker table. Some people I know that do casting have used a shaker table rather than the vac. But that, yes, you can tap it or drop it, lift it, drop it, and it will clear some of the air bubbles.
Somewhere in the back of my mind, I remember seeing somebody use a small handheld torch that draws the bubbles up.
To dry the resin, you mean, or
no? It makes the bubbles come up to the surface.
that I can't. I've never seen that
It's
or talked to
somewhere in
anyone.
the back of my mind. I don't know where I saw it. might be totally different. But I think I would rather go with your vacuum chamber.
Well,
than
also
try
I've
that.
seen hair dryer in use. I've never seen a torch, but hair
Well,
dryers.
maybe that's what I'm thinking of is a hair dryer.
Hair dryer will activate the resin at a quick. Well, for example, if here in Minnesota in the cooler basement, if you I happen to have temps that I can hold them at 68, 70 and no problem. But should in my older home before I moved in the one I'm at, I would use a hair dryer many times to activate the resin when at a temperatures, we're at a cooler level. Excuse me. So and it activates the resin very quickly. An older resin sometimes doesn't want to start the cure process right away. And if you hit it with a hair dryer, it'll activate it, get it moving. And if you're in a real hurry and don't want to wait your pot life time, you know what I mean, for the cure time, then you can activate it that way. And I suppose you could try a torch, but I think you'd destroy the mold too.
Yeah.
You might light the place up.
Yeah, I think I don't know how flammable resins are, but it's probably not a good idea to use what I suggested.
Well, like I say, hair dryer is not a problem. I've used the hair dryer and it works fine, but I've never tried a torch. The people I know, some of them, like I say, Aaron, who did a lot of casting, and I've talked to Tom Madden. He put kits out, and then there was Ted Collada did, he's Speedwitch. Um, Most of those guys Collada's just learned casting recently. And I believe his mentor was Pierre Oliver or Aaron Germunson. And those guys, I'm doing simple flat casting, which is what I was showing you here. I have no desire to get into one piece bodies. See, I'm one of those old school guys that I preferred flat kits because I could cheat and make they were my masters immediately. I didn't have to cut up a resin car to get what I wanted. I could use the flat kit and make molds right out of them. And I did that with many kits. So instead of one car, that kit provided 2 cars, 3 cars, etc.
Yeah, in a way, it's a nice alternative to what do they call it? That new kind of late.
The 3D printing.
3D printing, right? Thank you.
Well, we
I mean, yeah, you can 3D print stuff off of plans and that, but this is kind of cool. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but the 3D printing,
yeah,
I'm not going to get into it. You got it. First of all, my age, I don't want to learn CAD. Okay, I don't know CAD. And you've got to have CAD knowledge or someone who has CAD. And if you see the 3D printed projects, they're outstanding. But they remember each layer it provides one of those. I don't know what you want to call them, little arms, and you can have on small parts. You can have hundreds of those, and you have to cut each one individually. And so cleanup, I think, on 3D printing is takes a lot of time. I built a couple small projects, not cars. I built a couple of vehicles, and that takes a lot of time to clean that all up.
Yeah,
my opinion.
I totally agree. That's why I thought casting's a lot nicer in a way.
So, I like I say, the resin works, and the only other thing, if you were tempted to, we're going to order it through the mail. Don't do it in cold weather, because it'll freeze. And if that rubber or resin, I'm going to tell you, freezes, throw it in the trash. The rubber is right away; it's gone. It's no good. It's same thing with paint. Obviously, if we order paint, I can't do it here in Minnesota sometimes. If I want to order a special paint.
Here I've got a 3D printed 61.
There it is.
Yep.
Look at those hundreds of legs.
What is that?
It is, if I can get my camera to behave here, it's a 60-something Chevy Suburban.
Wow. It looks like it's in a cage.
Yeah. Obviously I bought this because I don't have the mindset and the printing capability to print this,
Right.
but yeah,
Mhm.
just happened to come in the other day and
Nice.
Oh, you
Yeah.
got it all built.
oh no, this is just as it came off the printer.
Oh,
I
okay.
haven't done anything with it. It just came in the other day. So
Well, that's the new thing. Remember, we came
yeah,
when I
yeah.
started modeling, wood was even big. Then L. Armitage came along. He got us into styrene, and most of us went immediately to styrene. And then I learned a little bit about. I had a friend out of Canada uh, who was into the RPM world. Excuse me, and he got me into resin a little bit, making parts. And so
Oh.
once you and it's like anything else. It's any part of the hobby. Once you start doing it, you learn a little bit about it. Yeah, I went to a couple presentations, like that Aaron Germunson did in Chicago, and so you learn, and they help you out. You get, and of course, as you play with it, you get a little better at it. And as you said, well, see, in my case, I went from that 10 to 1 to 1 to 1 because for me, it's a lot easier. It's very simple. I can mix 1 to
Right.
1. This, I don't want to measure and pour. And anyway, I'll let you guys if you decide to do that.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. What do your measuring devices, what do you use for cleanup for that?
Well, really, I use paper cups and throw them away.
Oh,
Literally, and or the resin, same thing. Paper cups. That's why, you can reuse a resin one again and again until the resin builds up in the cup. But
yeah.
for rubber, no.
Yeah,
Mix it up once, throw it in the trash.
I was just thinking of the measuring cups themselves, but yeah.
No, I don't clean them.
Oh,
I'm too lazy to do that,
yeah.
and I feel they're too cheap to buy.
Yeah, I didn't know if there was any kind of solvent that works on that stuff or not.
Yeah, that I don't know. If there is, I'm not aware. I do
Yeah.
not know.
Yeah, yeah, there is for
Nope.
fiberglass resin, but
And like I say, that rubber it's really, and the resin too, so messy that the gloves. So
yeah,
yeah,
throw 'em
it's
away.
easier to throw it in the trash, and especially with the small paper cups.
Yeah,
And the
Right.
plastic ones, when my wife, for example, was she broke her leg this summer, so it wasn't the best experience. But she was gone for 4 days at a rehabilitation type center, to bring the leg back. And every day she got these little plastic cups that you saw. And
yeah.
so I collected several boxes from the pills and everything she took.
Yep.
They thought I was kind of weird. A couple of the nurses said, what do you want doing with that stuff? I
Oh, yeah.
said, I need them for my hobby. And so one of the nurses said, well, I'll bring you a box. And she did.
Oh, wow, nice.
Yep.
Usually, if you're nice to them, they'll be nice to you.
They might have been afraid that if you needed more of them, you're going to break her other leg.
No, not the case.
Lester, can you tell me what the shelf life is for the molding compound as well as the resin? And I'm
Well,
talking about the how long you have before you have to use it.
I usually buy mine in the fall. It lasts the entire season, so I might buy it in October. So I'm going to say, sitting in my basement in my shop there that you saw, good 6 months, and then the resin even lasts a lot longer. What I buy that from that local company Iasco, that resin lasts even longer, and it can thicken. But if you stir it, believe it or not, it still makes a mold as if it were new. It's slower to cure, okay, but I'm saying about 6 months. And the rubber, it's the same thing with the rubber as well as the resin. One of the parts is one part lasts much longer, probably a year, but one of the parts only lasts about the 6 months. So, for example, the 1-to-1 rubber, the blue bottle, you could have a gallon of that after you've purchased a few of the times. But the white, let's say the whites, it goes in about 6 months, I'd say.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for listening.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very,
yeah,
very good.
presentation's no good without an audience. It's
Yeah,
kind of like
nicely
you
done.
guys are the VIPs, very important people.
Very nicely done, Lester. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very
for doing
welcome.
that.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it. We are on for next week, but we do not have a presenter. So if anybody'd like to present, just let me know and we'll get you on the schedule. Until then, enjoy the rest of your week.
You
Thanks,
guys
everybody.
too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Take care.
everybody.
Good night.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Good night.
Everybody have a good week.
You
Yep.
too.
Thank you.